Okay, Dr. Sohail, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
So, we are back with new topic, Iqbal and philosophy. So, my very first question, sir, how do you see Iqbal's philosophy, or rather, as a poet philosopher?
So, if we do normally, Iqbal is a philosopher in a sense of he is philosopher by training also, since philosophy was one of his subjects, as well as the way he pursued philosophy academically also. But since there were various elements, strands of his personality, he was poet, he was philosopher, he was thinker, he was seer, and he has many caps or hats, or he had many, I would say in Urdu, sifat. So the point is that philosopher, in his own words, was philosopher his defining or overriding theme in that sense. So we normally say Iqbal can best be understood as a poet philosopher rather than philosopher in that academic sense or that in the strict sense, because the way poetry as an element dominated his way of expression, his mode of expression. So he did not express himself professionally. He was not he was a philosopher in the technical sense of the word, but he did not express. He did not choose the technical medium of philosophy of expressing his own self. So poetry as a medium, or prose also. So you can say he was a poet, a philosopher, who had strong his on the whole, you can say his Iqbalian theme can be grounded in philosophy also. But the expression is his being as a poet or philosopher was the way we can understand him in that sense. So if you say how Iqbal tried to see, so I just see Iqbal as a among philosophies and Iqbal as a philosopher. So if I just see in the philosophies, he was engaged both with the philosophers or philosophies of East and West, from Razi to medieval logicians to ilm kalam to so all way Quran, the way we could all in all manner of the word try to understand the word philosophy. Philosophy is the right word, but if we don't say it's in Islamic thing, it's more a hikmah or it's akal or fahm. So, but since philosophy is a Greek word, it's love for wisdom. So you can say Greek philosophy or Western philosophy or modern philosophy or medieval philosophy or Islamic philosophy. So he could straddle where among all these things and uniquely have its own Welton Shuang, you can say in that sense, how he tried to see. So if I just quote him, for example, how did Iqbal see philosophy fundamentally? So if I quote Iqbal, so when he starts reconstructing, he says, how do we, what's the nature of the universe? What's our place in this universe? And what is the best ethical way, how best to live in this universe? These are some fundamental questions of philosophy or religion or fundamental questions before saying that whether they are questions of philosophy, of religion or poetry or philosophy. He says that whether these human modes of human and human expressions, whether or human inquiries, whether it's poetry, whether it's philosophy, or whether it's religion. So he takes religion in some sense at a superior pedestal as compared to higher poetics or poetry, or as compared to uh, uh, what I should say, philosophy. So the point is that if I quote him, what he says that is it possible to apply a rational method of philosophy to religion? So the tools or techniques or modes of inquiry of philosophy are they suitable for religion? So, and further, if he supplements it, the religion stands, which he is saying, in the spirit of age, which was dominated by rationality. Religion stands in greater need for rational foundations of ultimate principles than even the dogmas of science. But to rationalize faith is not to expect superiority of philosophy of religion. Philosophy cannot give religion inferior position among its data. तो इस मीन्स दैट जो हमारी द रिलीजन ये इसकी एक कुल्ली हकीकत है इट्स अ होलिस्टिक थिंग so science physics chemistry they might so because ultimately the very way philosophy at the end starts with inquiry and ends with inquiry but in the process so it starts with question at the ends of the question and ends with the question so it doesn't resolve or absolve anything so in that context, Iqbal even critiques philosophy and he wants to say whether philosophy is the right way, can philosophy judge the religion? So to him, religion stands at some higher place as compared to philosophy, and it's a holistic way of looking at things. Yes. Yes.
Okay, Dr. Sahil, how can you compare Iqbal's philosophy of self from different philosophers or philosophies?
So Iqbal's philosophy, whether it's what I should say, Plato, Spinoza, Hegel, Marx, what I should say, Nietzsche. So it's the Western philosophers. In Eastern thing, he was very much influenced by the way looking at Quran as a fundamental thing, a Quranic way of looking at Quranic. I would not say philosophy, a Quranic Aqidah or edifice and how it was elaborated on by philosophers from Ibn Sina to Imam Ghazali to Imam Razi and to whole scholarship of Islamic philosophy he could straddle and somehow he sort of developed an overarching view where he could relate both philosophers of East as well as West not only philosophies of Muslim and Western philosophy, even Hindu philosophy, philosophy of Vedant or Upanishads, the famous debates of what I should say, what I should say, shuhud or ilm wujud, what I should say,
Wahdatul.
Wahdatul Wujud, and so how they were Wahdatul Shuhud, how they were in the background of Vedantic philosophy or duality how the individual ego can dissolve in the Atman and how it can dissolve in the larger things. So in that context, how he took position, not that of Ibn Arabi or not that of Vedantic philosophers. So we can say he could straddle among all the three, what I should say, philosophies, whether it was Western Hindu philosophy, Western philosophy, and Islamic philosophy. For example, when he compares Kant and Ghazali, he says that Kant, trying to find and did not find, he found philosophy has fundamental limitations. He went and he gave scope to mysticism. So he critiques Kant there. In the same breath, he critiques Ghazali there. But in the same breath, he also critiques what I should say Kant also in that sense that in some sense he developed semblance between Kant and Ghazali that they found that there were some limitations of philosophy in trying to straddle or in trying to reach some at some fundamental in trying to reach the ultimates but how Kant developed a path and how Ghazali developed a path. So Kant went into the philosophy of ethicalism. So he took ethics. He developed an ultimate foundations of ethics, which were independent of rationality. He gave that position to it. The way so he could compare the two and develop his own way, how he could have his own path. In the same way, he could just for example even in case of Nietzsche or even in case of Bergson's idea of time how he describes pure duration and how he So in Western philosophy, you have, for example, if I'm just jumping it. So once Descartes said that I think I am. This means while even just denying the existence of your own self. So in that denial also, the self should be there. So his self or Plato's idea of self in that. So leave away Plato, the way Descartes, Leibniz. So the whole sort of Western philosophy, how it's basically an engagement of self in that, how it's a realization of that self, the Cartesian self. But Iqbal also tries to develop the idea of self, the idea of khudi, which we normally say, how he tried to see in that sense, how he tried to develop the ideas of khudi.
Okay, sir. What is basically, sir, political philosophy of Sir Allama Iqbal, alayhi rahmat?
So, political philosophy of Allama Iqbal is, for example, so if I quote Plato thought that kings should be philosophers, but philosopher kings. But even we saw that even when kings become philosophers, even philosophers can be corrupted also. It's a critique of Plato. But for Iqbal, if I quote him, what he says that power without vision, vision without power does bring moral elevation, but cannot give a lasting culture. Power without vision tends to become destructive and inhuman. Both must combine for a spiritual expansion of humanity. So he was not like Christianity. You can go for salvation individually, divorced from the realities of social realities. Or he was not like that hardcore, what I should say, legalist or jurist, or in that sense, the who had or that who power divorced of any spiritualization. So he wanted an element, combine the elements of this power with spiritualization power in that sense. You can say it that way. So in that way, he straddled both sometimes with the peculiar notions of the way we have in Islamic thing, Khilafah idea of Khilafah. So sometimes he would go for demo. So he would, he's for example, he says Jalali Badshaahi ho ya ho Jumhuri Tamasha. वो दीन से अलग सियासत तो रह जाती है चंगेजियत. So he is not interested whether it's democracy or whether it's king. So he wanted to be that ethicality. How we can spiritualize power. If Bertrand Russell says that we have to tame power, rather Iqbal would want to spiritualize power. Not in because his idea of Mardi Mumin or his idea of having those sifat, Burhani sifat, they will naturally lead the notions of power, his realization of that khudi, हाथ है अल्लाह का बंदे मोमिन का हाथ. So he will naturally have those qualities, those sifats, which will be divinely qualities, which will be good for mankind. The power will be kept in checks, not externally, both internally as well as from externally also. If I'll just say it that way.
Dr. Sahil, there is a very famous verse in Jawab-e-Shikwa. I would like to quote it, sir. रह गई रस्म अज़ां रह गई रस्म अज़ां रूह बिलाली न रही फलसफा रह गया तलकीन गजाली न रही. Would you please like to throw some light on it?
So you're right. Iqbal was, in some sense, when he talked of Rasmi Rahegi Rasmi Azza Ruhi Bilal. So he wanted to, his idea of Khudi, the way he would want to see Rasmi Raheg, Falsafa Hegei. So he was not interested in that dry philosophy, dry philosophizing, because the way Nazir Iqbal Abadi says, Falsafi ko door milta nahi, sira kahan hai, door milti nahi hai. So he was against that dry philosophizing in that sense, because he wanted philosophy with some action for the larger good of mankind or individual. So in that sense, he was very much against those sophists, or who who were only interested in that dialectical thing, without concern for action, or oblivious of the larger concerns of mankind or humanity, or the age in which he was living in. So he wanted to combine philosophy with action, philosophy with values. So in that sense, so you can say, I'll just second it. He was not totally against philosophy. He was against dry philosophizing. So philosophy without any purpose. So for example, he says, इसी कश्मकश में गुजर रही है मेरी जिंदगी की रातें. इसी कश्मकश में गुजर गई मेरी जिंदगी की रातें. कभी सोजो साज रूमी, कभी पेच ताजी राजी. कभी सोजो साज रूमी. Well, sometimes that it's like I'm in that paradox is there. So you just, so my life has gone. So sometimes I go to Razi. He satisfies him, but keeps me unsatisfied in some sense. But then I go to Sozo Sazo Rumi. Rumi somehow satisfies me in some another sense. So here you can say in his entire philosophy, this Aql and Ishq, Aql and Ilm, that dialogue, the debate, some where he just ultimately says Ishq in that superior sense, that kashmakash, that paradox, that debate is there. So you can say it that way. So that's why he's Kabi Sozo Sazo Rumi, Kabi Pechutabu Razi. So this is what he's saying. Yes, yes.
अच्छा डॉक्टर सुहेल, इसी तनाजुर में, इसी तसलसल में, इससे पहले कि मैं आखिरी क्वेश्चन की तरफ आऊँ, ये chose Imam Ghazali alayhi rahmah in this very verse. Talqini Ghazali na rahi. Why he chose Ghazali? There were numerous
Ghazali is basically a watershed. Okay. 15th century, 16th century. So people thought in that certain way. If you read Muslim philosophies, whether they were Ash'arites, whether they were Mu'tazilites, whether they were Maturidis, so there was a huge debate. So Ghazali has been, in a sense, watershed in how we can, what is knowledge and classification of knowledge. So in that canon, Ghazali was very much instrumental or significant or watershed in entire edifice of Muslim philosophy, how he defined things. When he wrote Incoherence of Philosophers and Incoherence of Philosophies, even though you can take Ibn Rushd and Islamic philosophy has other strands also. Maybe Ibn Arabi you can take it in that Ghazalian sense, but another form of so Iqbal, that's why Iqbal is Ghazali is historically an important figure in Islamic philosophy.
डॉक्टर सेल कुछ और अशार हैं अगर आपकी इजाज़त हो तो.
हाँ you can listen.
तेरे ज़मीर पे जब तक हो, तेरे ज़मीर पे जब तक हो नुज़ूल किताब, गिरह कुशा है नाराज़ी न साहिबे कशार. अकल अयार है सौ बेस बदलती है. सर लवली लाइन्स. अकल अयार है सौ बेस बदलती है, इश्क बेचारा न मुल्ला है न जाहिद न हकीम. अकल अयार है सौ बेस बदलती है, इश्क बेचारा न मुल्ला है न जाहिद न हकीम. गुजर जा अकल से आगे के नूर, गुजर जा अकल से आगे के नूर, चिरागे राह है मंजिल नहीं. Can you sir please elucidate?
So it's again the famous in that sense अकल ये है वो, if I'll just
तेरे ज़मीर
falsafy से हाँ the first you said
तेरे ज़मीर no I didn't yet said that. तेरे ज़मीर पे जब तक हो नुज़ूल किताब, गिरह कुशा है नाराज़ी न साहिबे कशा.
So it's like the way he says तेरे ज़मीर जब तक न हो. So he want the way Iqbal wanted to say his way of looking at Quran and the way of looking at divine. So he wanted to see the presence of that divine or ultimate. The presence is the present there, and with that continuous consciousness of being present in that divine consciousness or witness, you can say in that sense. So unless and until you have that metaphysics which is beyond rational, that overarching presence which you cannot catch with rationality, unless and until that is there, that witness is there, जब तक न हो नुज़ूल किताब, किताब in that sense, in the Quranic sense,
Divine.
in that sense, गिरह कुशा नाराजी. So to गिरह कुशा नाराजी means things will not be clear to it, even if it's razi, or even if it's a kashaf, he's a grammarian or a linguist. So these things will not be clear to you. So again, he wants to believe in philosophy or rationality or akal or ilm or faham, but it has to be just supplemented or complemented or in the background of that metaphysics, which has religion, which has that divine consciousness or witness in that presence.
Then अक्ल अय्यार है सौदेश बदलती है.
Yes, yes.
इश्क बेचारा न मुल्ला है न जाहिद न हकीम.
Again, this is Ishq Mullah hai na Zahid hai na Hakim. Hakim, you can say philosopher in the Muslim sense. So Ishq goes way wherever it finds right, it has that inner voice. So in that sense, I just forgot to mention that when he says of inner voice, when Iqbal talks of his own self. So when he compares the self in that sense, he is not comparing the self of Western like Spinoza, like Descartes, like Hegel. So he has this self, the inner voice. It's also sort of godly voice, which will say you where to go. It's somewhat, you can say it, that khudi, that real self-realization. It's in tune with that ultimate realization. You can say Allah or God. So it will say you. So it's a higher consciousness in that sense, and you have to work for it. That's what you just said it. What you said it.
अक्ल अय्यार है सौदेश बदलती है.
The mind will always is calculating. It will always think for next steps. What's useful. Ayar means clever.
Clever, confusing.
Not clever or diplomatic in that sense. It's self deluding. You will just what's immediately beneficial. It can sacrifice for what's everlasting.
Yes.
What's the ultimate thing. So you can say in that clever sense, akal is the definition of akal is there in that sense. But it has to be inundated, or it has to be just tuned in presence of that ishq. Ishq hakiki in that sense, or in how you can mold your khudi in the realization of that ishq.
गुजर जा अक्ल से आगे की ये नूर चिरागे राह है मंजिल नहीं.
This one is beautiful. This is chirage rah. Means akal is it's
can show you the path.
Show you the path. It's a light. It's a torch, but it is not
it can direct you.
It can direct. It's not the end in itself. That metaphysics.
It's not a destiny.
It's not destiny. It will help you in reaching you somewhere. The goal is not. It will show you the path, but it's not the end.
That's great. Okay. Before I would like to.
I'll just quote. For example, he's saying falsafi se namulla se garz mujhko.
जी जी.
ये दिल की मौत वो अंदेश है नजरो falsafi से. So in that sense, ये इकबाल बरात भी लेता है ना. Sometimes what I'm saying. Because the times in which he was living, there were many stands. Iqbal was also facing acute sense of his qawm or his nation or his people. They were not somehow coming up to the realities of their times, their mullahs, their leaders, or the realities of subcontinent, the colonial realities. So they were making also him uncomfortable. So he was maybe a lot of westernized elites of those times. So they would have come. So he was against their dry philosophizing. They will not help in solving those day-to-day problems. And he was also having some acute, what I should say, he appreciated some aspects of even Kant, even MacTaggart, even Hegel, Spinoza. So he was, but he had also some, what I should say, differences with those philosophies and ideologies. So that's why in that context, his philosophy, sometimes he is becoming a repellent to philosophy. Although even entire his discourse, whether you go through reconstruction, whether you go to in his poetry, there is a strong element of philosophy in there, here and there, and rationality here and there.
Thank you, sir. And on that note, it's really lovely verse. न फलसफे से न मुल्ला से है गर्ज मुझको,
हाँ, इसी
ये दिल की मौत वो अंदेशे नज़र का फसाद. Well, sir, on that lovely note, I would like to wind up this lovely session. As always, pleasure to talk to you, sir. And these moments are really memorable for me to talk to a person like you. Thank you very much, and may Allah bless you.
Thanks. Okay.